Geez, I started making artwork since I can remember. My dad collected comic books. I always just mimicked the comic books that I saw. And when I was in kindergarten, I saw people drawing stick figures and I was like, what are you guys doing? That's not how people draw. People look, they have thickness to them and they have actual fingers, they don't have little lines, So right from an early age, I kind of knew that I had a gift. When I first started making artwork, I got introduced to the Royal Chicano Air Force. They were a political group and still are that formed in the late 60s, early 70s. And they made political posters for Cesar Chavez and certain community events. And once I was introduced to them, specifically Ricardo Favela, who was my professor at Sacramento State, I was able to see the impact that art can have on the community, specifically Chicano art. And so I started making posters for marches and events and fundraisers as soon as I could remember my mom telling me that I was Chicano up until to this point. So a lot of my artwork kind of just echoes those memories. When I was a child, being a person of Mexican descent, not knowing Spanish, growing up in Hollister for the majority of my childhood, I always felt like there was a disconnect. I didn't quite fit in with the people who were like straight from Mexico, and I didn't really have relationships with people who were American, quote unquote. And so I kind of felt like I was in the middle. It was a tough thing. And when my mom told me I was Chicano, I asked her what that meant. She said, oh, it's a Mexican who was born in the United States. It's kind of a simplified version of what that means. I felt left out often. I felt like I was overlooked. A lot of the times, name calling, growing up, poor was really tough. Luckily, I had a very supportive family. My parents were awesome. My family always knew that I was into art. And once I started to get more serious about it and connecting my political beliefs to it, they were all really supportive because my family were really liberal. My parents were very liberal. So seeing that my artwork reflect those kind of principles, they were really happy with it. The first art classes I ever took were in high school. And I could already draw and everything. And my friends would always ask me to draw them something. So I'd draw them something. I wanted to be a basketball player. Drawing stuff started to get like boring to me because when people would ask me, it was like I wasn't drawing the things that I wanted to draw. But I didn't know what I wanted to draw. I didn't know I just knew I could do it. So I started getting into basketball, started playing basketball a lot. I got injured, couldn't do that anymore. My chiropractor told me my senior year, I heard you could do art. I was like, yeah. He's like, you should probably just stick to that. Basically, your back's messed up, man. You're not gonna play basketball. Kind of like a mixed blessing because then I wasn't gonna make the NBA. In my head, I thought it was, but I wasn't. So it was kind of a mixed blessing because I took on art. Once I made the connection to my political beliefs and art, that's when I was like, oh, now I have something to make art about because I didn't have that connection before. It was just drawing something to draw something. It was painting something to paint something, but I had no connection to it. Once I had the connection, then I knew I was onto something. I think success as an artist is staying true to what you believe in your artwork, not trying to please other people, and hopefully within the art making that you're doing, that you're affecting the community in a positive way. So my students inspire my work because my college is a Hispanic serving institution. There's a lot of brown people. I think by them seeing me and me introducing them to other artists who are a reflection of them, they're waking up to the fact that artists are just regular people and you can be that too. What I like to do is I like to try to make them feel that Chicano artists, Latino artists are just people and you can do the same thing. It's not like something that's totally out of reach. Hola Mija is an homage to my wife's grandmother and their relationship. She had passed away about a year ago. She was basically my wife's mother. She raised her. Before she passed away, my wife told her something to the effect of, if you come back as an owl and visit me. My wife wanted her grandma to pick out a flower for her to get a tattoo of after she passes. The day she passed away, there was a rose right by the door. The composition that I made for Hola Mija is my wife during a time that we shared together that was very, very happy for us. In the background, there was the floral design because her grandmother loved to garden. She was always gardening. The owl represented her grandma, and then the flower represented that flower that she saw the day her grandma passed away. So there are all these elements that combined into that composition, as well as the color scheme. The picture that I chose of my wife was, we love going to Portland, especially in the fall, and the leaves are just all over the place and it's so yellow. So those geometric shapes in the background are kind of like a representation of that. My identity is definitely grounded in Chicanismo and in my family. In my artwork, a lot of things that have to do with what I learned growing up and things that I learned and I'm still learning echo into the composition. Growing up, I was not aware of Chicano artists, Mexican artists, Latin American artists. I was more aware of like things you would learn about like classical Roman art or the Renaissance, definitely Eurocentric. So what I wanted to do was show the things that I learned growing up, as well as the things that I started to learn about my own indigenous side, being somebody of Mexican descent. And so I have a Greek sculpture mixed with an Aztec sculpture, kind of intertwined, because basically that's who I am. When I think of identity, I think of being a Chicano and what that means. And to me, what that means is that you pay homage to the indigenous side, which a lot of terms for my people don't. I want to make it clear that in my artwork, it originates from my past, not just my personal past, but also my cultural past. But at the same time, I don't want to worry too much about if somebody else totally gets the idea. Because once you start to do that, you start to limit yourself and your composition gets more narrow. You can't help everybody see what you're making. You just have to kind of go with the original idea, allow it to become what it wants to be. And if some people get some of those aspects of the thing that you're saying, that's fine. But if they have their own connection to it, that's great too.